Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and we are going to make some keychains and have a great time doing it. Now, if you're new to leather, perfect place to begin. Very little needed in the way of skills or materials, but creativity, sky literally is the limit. But at the same time, we're going to pick up just a couple of techniques that we will use across the board on all of our projects. All right, anything I use in this video, weaverleathercraft.com, or look below, we've got links there, going to take you straight to the website. So, let's start with this. This seems to be a fan favorite because we can put our keys on this, drop that in our pocket, the tab hangs out, easy to find, easy to grab. All right, let's step over here and knock together a simple pattern. Now, for our keychain, we're going to use a 3/4 inch wide strap. It's good width, it's going to be sturdy, but also too, we're going to use a 1-inch split ring and a 3/4 inch deep. Easy enough. All right, let's start right here. I'm going to cut this piece at 5 inches and this piece at 6 inches, so we've got a little more distance here, okay? So our first strap, let's bring this over now. Copy paper, not great pattern material by any means, but if I like the design and it works for me, I'll transfer this over to our plastic sheeting. Makes a great pattern material. All right, so our first strap right here, 5 inches long, there we go. Now, from our ends, we need distance between the end of our strap and our rivet hole. So let's come in on one end, 3/8 of an inch, and drop in a mark. Okay, first rivet hole. Now, for our bend back, I need a little room here. I don't want this to be pinned in there. I want it to move freely. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches from that hole to my next hole. It's 1.5, there we go. All right, let's do the same thing on the other end because that's just like that end, okay? 3/8 of an inch in. From that point, 1.5. All right, cool. Easy enough on this strap. Let's jump over to this because it's literally half the work. We just have a bend back on that one end. We're going to make this 6 inches where this is 5. So let's come into our center line, 3/8 of an inch. There we go. And from that line, 1.5. All right, circle that. So what we have is 3/4 inch by 6 inches, and then 3/4 inch by 5 inches. Cool. Okay, let's cut this out. All right, there we go. That's cut. Set that aside, and let's split the two. Very nice. Okay, like I said, easy pattern. Now, we're going to add an English point onto that end. Kind of dress that up a little bit. So let's mark that in. All right, pattern is ready. Again, like I said, super easy to do. So let's step over to our main cutting table, cut some leather. Now we're going with one of our 12 by 12 inch panels, and I love these. Very affordable, quality leather. This is the coffee beam. Now it's a little dark for the camera shot, but we're gonna add groove lines. It's really gonna stand out, all right? So 3/4 of an inch, 12 inch across. So let's mark on both ends. Put in a small cut at 3/4. There we go, easy enough to see. Same on this end, 3/4. All right, let's flip our square around, drop that into our marks, and let's cut. There we go, easy leather to cut. Now, we're gonna add a groove line. It's easier to do this to start with on a single piece. But what a groove line is, primary job here is to literally cut a groove in the top grain of the leather for my chisel if I'm going to sew. But I use this on most of my edges because it dresses up the edge. So I've got a cutting head and a guide. What I'm going to do is bump that guide against my leather, and I'm going to pull my hand up about 45 degrees and give this just a little counterclockwise pressure. Look at that. That is cool. All right. Cuts through that top grain. Let's do the other side. Same thing. All right, there we are. A little squirrely on the beginning there, but that's okay. We're going to need only 11 inches of this. So let's come to this end, cut it 5 inches. There's that piece. And cut it 6. There we go. All right, so easy enough cutting. Now let's take this, jump over to our quartz. We're going to mark and punch. Now, a couple easy steps here, and we are done. All right, so let's take our pattern, drop that on our leather, and I'm going to take my awl and simply mark my rivet holes. Easy enough to see. Again, I love working with this leather. Okay, Let's step over here. Again, camera may not pick that up, but really easy enough to see there once we get a hole in it. Now, on my revolving punch, I'm going to go with about my second tube because I want my rivet to be a little bit snug in that hole. I don't want it swimming around in there, but if it's snug, it's going to be a good bite. Therefore, it's going to last, be very durable. There we go. All right, 2 more holes. And done, okay? Now, we're going to add an English point, which is a belt tip punch. And we're going to add this away from our holes on our tab or our second strap. There we go. Okay, looks pretty good thus far. Cool. Now, one thing we can do. This is a 3/4 inch round end punch. We won't see this. And in fact, we really don't have to add this, but let's do that. Look at that. Makes that other end very professional, very finished. Now, one more point on our end right here. We don't have to go with an English point. We can cut an edge, we can leave it natural, straight, or we can just make clips. But that looks pretty good. All right, let's step over to our quartz, drop in some rivets, and this keychain is done. Now, we're going to use brass hardware for this. To me, that looks great, but nickel would pop just as nicely. All right, let's start right here. We're going to use a double cap rivet. So there we have a post, and there's a cap. Now, we're going to use the small, or the 1/4 inch. That's going to be ample for 2 4 to 5 ounce back-to-back. All right, so let's take a split ring. Going to take my post from one end or the other, come through from my back, drop my split ring on. Then we're going to flip that around. That's going to meet nicely. Look at that, because we took our time with our pattern. Now, with me, I tend to like to let my hardware hang over the edge when I set my rivet. If I've got a large buckle, D or O there, that gives that loop area to bend off of my table, so therefore, when I go to set my rivet, clean, straight set. Now, rivet setters, number of different kinds, but they all have in common a concaved end. That's going to keep us from flattening our cap. So let's drop that in. There we go, clean and easy. Notice how my rivet, it's actually sunk in just a little bit on my leather. That's what we're looking for. All right, let's take the other end. Same thing, but with our D. So I'm going to take my post, going to come in from my back, flip that around, and there we go. All right, let's find a cap. Drop that in, let that hang off the edge. All right, easy enough. Last one, same thing. Let's come through our D, bring our post in from the back, bend that around. There we go. All right, let's find a cap, drop that in. Now with this, I can let that hang off, but let's go ahead and set that flat because I've got room in there for that to move. All right, very good. Well, that is a good looking keychain, very professional. Everything moves easily, just what we're looking for. Simple and professional, looks great, can't wait to put a key on that. But at the same time, we've now used a groover, we've set a rivet, we've used a revolving punch, and we've used some end punches. So we're well on our way to higher level projects. All right, we're going to step it up a little bit. We're going to jump over to a veg tan leather. Therefore, we can dye ourselves, and we're going to add some spots. Those are pretty cool. All right, same thing with a pattern. Super easy to do, so let's step over here and knock that out. Now, we're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to drop our width down to 5/8 inch, but we've got an additional loop there. Your project, your call. Make that as long as you want. All right, but let's keep it simple for this. So our total length here is going to be 9 inches. So let's go ahead and mark it 9. Now notice too, I've got 3 holes here. I've got a loop right here. It's going to circle around and come back. All right, so on this end, just like the previous, let's come in 3/8 of an inch from our end. There's our first rivet hole. Now I want a little bit more room. We went 1.5 between rivets on the last, but let's give that a little extra room there. So let's come in 2 inches. There we go. And from the other end, notice I've just got a single spot or a single rivet hole there. So let's bring that in 3/8 of an inch. Okay, there's our rivet holes. Now we're going to add our spots 1/2 of an inch apart. Now I want to start right here because this is my front. So if I'm a little short or a little long back here, nobody's going to see that. So let's come right to our center line, and I'm going to drop in a mark every 1/2 inch. And there we go. Works out almost perfectly. Okay, so let's do 5/8 inch by 9 inch. Let's circle our spots. And when we step over to our table, we're going to do a little pattern maintenance here so we don't miss our spots. We don't punch a hole where we simply need to make a mark. All right, so let's cut this out. And cut that off. Okay, we've used a round end punch. So let's do that again. Let's put a round end on both ends of our keychain. All right, so again, very easy pattern to make. Let's step over here, mark this in red and black, and you'll see why. And then let's cut some leather. Now, this is a relatively simple pattern, but it's a good opportunity to learn how to mark our patterns because we don't want to get confused here. If we punch a hole where there's supposed to be a spot, spot's never going to sit there. So let's do this. With our black Sharpie, let's mark our rivet holes where we're actually going to punch a hole. Easy enough. Now let's step over to a red Sharpie because I want a mark and not a hole here. So let's go ahead and mark our spot marks. Okay, easy enough, but good looking pattern. We're not going to make a mistake now. Okay, let's pull out our leather. This is our Weaver Select, and I love this leather. Now we can cut this two ways. We can simply take our straight edge, mark, and cut a 5/8 inch. But this is one of the best tools in my shop. What I've got here is I can adjust this to any width. And I've got a blade right here, my cutting edge. So I've got this set, 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to drop this on my leather, just cut right in. Now see that, notice how it kind of slides in. That's good, good sharp blade. But now that I've got a little distance in, I'm going to grab this little tab and I'm going to pull it just a hair to the left. Look at that. How easy is that to cut a perfect strap every time? All right, let's drop this in. We're going to cut this to our length, 9 inches. All right, let's step over to our quartz. We're going to mark and punch. Now, I tend to like to punch my holes first. Therefore, those are taken care of. So with our pattern, let's butt to one end, mark with an awl. Same on the other end. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to use, again, second from my smallest tube on my revolving, so my rivet is nice and snug in that hole. There we go. Okay. Now, let's mark for our spots. We're safe. We're not going to make a mistake. And the last two. Okay. And one more step. Let's go ahead and add round end punch. Now, I'm going to use a 5/8 inch here, but if a 3/4 is all you have, that's not going to be an issue. That will still look good. All right. Very professional ends on that. Good. Let's step over to our pattern table, drop in some red dye. Now, a couple of quick points while I put on my gloves. Typically, I dip dye most everything. And what I mean by that is I can simply fill a small container with my dye. I can make just a small hook out of coat hanger, whatever we have, and simply run my project through. That is a great, fast way to dye, very consistent. But all told, that's going to take a little extra dye, and for such a small project, I'm simply going to use a dauber. Now, one more good point. Right here is a plastic trash bag, just an inexpensive bag. The problem is if I dye on this, the dye's going to pool. It's going to get slippery. It's going to be a mess. So I'm going to drop just some basic packing paper or copy paper, whatever you've got on top of that. This will absorb the dye. It's not going to spot and pool. All right? So, Pro Dye. It's just about the only dye I use because I can put on multiple coats. And you'll see what I'm talking about. This will be incredibly consistent. So with a dauber, I'm going to get a good bit of dye on that, and I'm going to make multiple passes on my front so I can get as much coverage here as I can in my first pass. Very nice. All right, now let's just hit our edges around our end. There we go. Okay, and on my back, I tend to like to dye the back. To me, that makes it look very finished. Okay, well that looks good. Maybe run a little bit more across our face. Very nice. Now, with the Pro Dye, all we have to do is walk away, and that is going to be clean and consistent. So let's give that I'd say maybe about 2 hours to dry. We'll come back, knock on our top coat. All right, we've given that ample time to dry, in fact, overnight, but about 2 hours is fine. But look at the dye. How consistent is that front and back? Looks like it was dyed at the tannery. Now, big point here. Dyeing does not have to be time-consuming, expensive, or messy. In fact, look at the total mess from dyeing this piece. I can fold this up, use it next time. But it's a little bit matte. That's okay. We're going to add a top coat. You're going to be amazed at the difference here. We're going to use a leather balm. So basically, I'm going to apply with one rag and buff with another. So really, I've got a wet and a dry rag. But this is super easy. So let's just apply some leather balm. There we go. Now, good coat. We can jump over to our dry rag, and I'm going to buff. Now, it always goes a little matte here, but once we get a little buffing in, this is going to be beautiful. And there we go. Look at that. Look at the gloss on it. Is that not beautiful? Looks professionally done. All right, let's step over to our quartz. We're going to drop in our spots. Now, there are 3 ways to set spots. If you need the speed, the Little Wonder is a great way to go. It's going to set a perfect spot every time. Secondly, we've got a hand setter. We'd simply drop our cap or our spot in here. We drop that on our leather and we hit it. Now, to me, this is a little bit hard to line up. So what we are going to do is literally set spots by hand. But doing this, all we need is a craft knife, a small pellet made out of cardboard, and you're going to be amazed. By hand, you'll see these spots are going to be straight as they can be. All right, so 5 steps to this process, but they all make sense. You'll see where I'm going with every bit of this. All right, let's make a mark. That's where a spot's going to be. Now, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to do my best to do some of this left-handed. So I'm going to take my spot with my 2 tines, and I'm going to drop that in on both sides of that mark. Now, the camera may not be able to pick that up, but I've straddled the mark with the tines. So with this, I'm going to drop in my craft knife on both sides. Now, I don't want a big hole there. I don't want more hole than tine. So let's drop that spot in. There we go. Press that through. Okay, easy enough. Now, with our mallet on our pallet, let's just give that 2 taps. Very cool. Look at that. Sunk in nicely, flush with our surface. All right, let's take our knife, and I'm going to bend those 2 tines inward. Thus far, makes sense. Okay, one more step. Let's put this on our quartz. I'm going to put the corner of my pallet on that. Give that 2 good pops. There we go. When I run my hand over that, I can barely feel that because my tines have sunk in. All right, so let's step over to this. Now I'm going to make my marks all the way down. Okay, our marks are in. So let's take our pallet. Now I'm going to run my knife all the way down. And our last hole. Okay, thus far pretty quick. We're at roughly less than a minute thus far. All right, now let's drop in our spots down our strip. All right, our spots are in, so let's drop this down. And I'm just going to run this across. There we go. Let's put that off the edge so it doesn't pop the others out. All right, very good. Now let's flip this over and bend our tines inward. And the last one, there we go. All right, let's take our pallet and just run down. There we go. Okay, now when I run my hand across that, I can barely feel those tines. Those are not going to snag or catch on anything. But look at that. How straight is that set by hand? That is beautiful. All right, let's step over to our main table. We're going to drop in a split ring and a rivet, and this keychain is done. All right, now we're going to use the same rivet. We're using 4 to 5 ounce, so a small or a 1/4 inch is going to work for us. So to keep from being confused, let's start here. I'm going to take my split ring, and I'm going to go to my end where my rivet holes are the closest. All right, let's take our rivet, come through from the top grain on the other end. We're going to circle that around. We're going to go through our back piece first, then we're going to lay our top down. There we go. Let's drop a cap on that. Okay, there we go. Now we've got enough room there to set that straight. Rivet setter, concaved end down. Look at that. That looks great. In fact, there's our black. Dyed that exactly the same way. How clean and crisp is that red with our nickel hardware? What a professional job, and how easy was that? Very cool. All right, we're going to take another step up. We're going to go with a mystery braid, one of my favorites. but we're going to add a cool touch here. We're going to set a snap. So therefore we can open that up and snap that onto something. Cool. All right, let's step over here and knock out our pattern. Now, since we're up to speed on our patterns, I've saved us a little time here, but we're going to increase our width up to 3/4 of an inch, and we're going to increase our length to 11 inches. So let's go ahead and write that in, 3/4 inch by 11. Now on this end, again, 3/8 in, 2-inch spread, and 3/8 in on this end. Now, here's where we need to change this up. What we're going to do is add 2 parallel strips right down the middle. So from this end, from my mark, from my rivet hole, I'm going to come in 1/2 of an inch, and then simply going to make 2 marks, 1/4 inch in from each edge. All right, let's come down. We're going to do the same thing on this end. Square that up, 1/2 inch in, mark it 1/4, and mark it 1/4. Now, let's connect those 2 lines. All right, there we go. So really, that's our pattern. Now, let's go ahead and draw in our round end punch. We'll punch both ends. Again, make that very professional looking, very finished. There we go. Okay, I'm going to cut this out. Let's step over to our main table and cut some leather. All right, the leather we're going to use now is one of our distressed chrome tan leathers. This is the redwood, and what a beautiful rich color, but notice the distress look. Very cool. All right, we're going to cut this out. We're going to cut the main body out by hand. We can cut our slits by hand, but we have a better way to do that. But if you're going to cut slits by hand, I would say cut those before we separate our piece out from the main body. Makes the whole thing easier. But let's go ahead and cut this at 3/4 of an inch. All right, good cut. Now, let's trim to size, which is going to be 11 inches. There we go. All right, now, we need to mark this. We're going to mark for our punch holes or our rivet holes, but the way we're going to do this, and you'll see this, we're not going to have to worry about marking for our slits. There we go. Okay, let's step over here and cut our 2 parallel lines. This is our leather lace stripper, and this is a huge help to me in my shop because what I can do, and it's going to be a little hard to see, is I can drop a blade in between each of these plates. This just comes off of the base. Therefore, I can pull a long piece of leather through this, make my own lace. Very cool, but also fringe. I can take a piece, run it through to the end, and I've got fringe. But for me, because I love doing the mystery braid, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop a blade in, 1/4 inch in, and then another 1/4 of an inch in. All right, I've got my marks here. Now, if it's easier for you to see these when we punch it, go ahead and punch your hole first, but I can see that pretty well. Now, I'm going to bring this in, bring this down because that's going to lock that leather down on my cutting blades. I'm going to come in about 1/2 of an inch, and watch this. We simply pull that through, and I'm going to come down to about 1/2 inch in from that last hole, lift that up. How easy is that? After trying to cut 2 slits or 2 parallel lines, that makes the whole thing a breeze. All right, let's jump over to our quartz, drop in our holes and our round end. We're going to set a snap on this. So therefore, I'm going to use the tube 1 under my largest tube on my revolving. So let's drop in our holes. There we are. All right, let's jump over to our 3/4 inch round and punch both ends. All right, looks good. Let's step over here and add our braid. We have a full video on the mystery braid, but we're going to boil it down because it's just a 3-strand braid, but we need to count our turns. All right, so let's start here. I'm going to take my right strand. I can go over or under, or I could start with my left, over or under. Again, just a 3-strand. So let's count our turns though. All right, we're going to turn under our center. That becomes the center. All right, left side, we're going to go under the center. That becomes the center. All right, 2 turns. There's number 3, there's number 4. Now at this point, what we need to do is notice my first strand, what we started with, is now in the center. I'm going to take my tab, I'm going to come up between my right and the center, go over that strand and back down between the left and the center. All right, it's still a little bit knotted. Easy enough. We counted 4 turns. There's number 5, there's number 6. Now we simply pull that apart and there it is. We have 1 set. All right, now let's start again. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to come around. It's that same strand, up, over, and down. There's number 5 and number 6, and we come back through. Okay, 2 sets. Does not look too bad, but it could be tighter. All right, let's do that. Let's squeeze in one more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it gets a little bit difficult, but again, there's my center. Let's work around that. Push that through. All right, number 5 and number 6, and then we simply pull it through. Same thing. Okay, so we have 3 sets in there. Still looks a little squirrely. Let's flip this around on our nail. Let's go to that nail. There we go. Now, I'm just loosening the braid. I don't have to untwist here because notice it's feeding me from the other end. So all we're doing now is trying to get that a little more consistent. Going to work our way down. And there we go. Okay, still a little long there, so we can always flip this back. Let's tighten just a bit there. Even that out. There we go. Okay, well that looks pretty good. Let's stretch that a little bit, run our hand down that, make it a little more consistent. Well, that looks good. All right, all that's left here is a split ring and a snap, so let's step over to our quartz. For our keychain, we're going to use a line 24 snap. Now typically this is 4 pieces, so we have a cap and a base and 2 female. Really all we're doing is riveting these onto the strap. These will bite, so therefore we're going to change this out for another cap. That way we can see it on both sides. We can do that. Yeah, no kidding. All right, so let's do this. Let's start right here. We're going to take a split ring, bring that around. All right, let's take a cap, and from our front side, from our top grain, we're going to go through there. Let's drop that in our anvil. Take our female piece with a flange on the outside, drop that in, and with our setter, let's put that right in that post. There we go, 2 good shots, and that sets nicely. Okay, we just want to set that hard enough to where it doesn't spin. All right, let's jump around to our other side. Now again, we're coming in from our top grain because we're going to snap together like that. So let's drop that in our anvil, drop our other female piece in. It's got the flange on the inside. Same setter, let's drop that in. 2 good shots. There we go, that's not spinning. And there we go. Very cool, so nice touch. Cap on both sides, so therefore we can unsnap that, loop that around something, re-snap it, and it's secure. And you can see why that's one of my favorites. Snap on both sides. Love the mystery braid, and that leather, just beautiful. All right, one more, our last one. Now, we've got some creativity here because we are going to do basically what I consider a production keychain. Super easy to make. We're going to use our veg tan, so therefore, all kinds of options on our face, and we'll look at those. So again, back to our pattern table. Let's get a pattern set. And we're back to our same piece of paper. We are not wasting leather, and we're not wasting copy paper either. In fact, on the leather, notice this little piece, 1/2 inch by 2 inches. That can come out of a good piece of scrap. All right, so with our main body here, we're 3.5 inches by 1 1/4 inch. So on the end of my paper, I'm going to make a mark, 1/4 inch. There we go, 1 1/4 inch. Then we're going to come down to 3.5 and 1 1/4 on that end. All right, well there's our pattern. Well, that wasn't too tough. Now we need a center line so we can center our rivet. So I'm going to make a mark at 5/8 and down here at 5/8. Let's connect the two and we've got our center line. There we go. Okay. For our rivet, let's come down 1/2 inch because we've got a round in there. Give that a little extra room. There we go. All right. You know what? There's our pattern for the most part. So let's cut this out. There we go. Okay, that piece is ready. Now let's jump over to our billet. 1/2 inch by 2 inches. Easy enough. In fact, I'm not even going to measure one end because that's easy enough to see. So let's drop that in. There we go. Let's add a center line on that. And right here, let's come in 3/8 inch and 3/8 inch. There we go. Well, that's easy enough. So let's write in 2 inches by 1/2 inch. And over here, 1 1/4 inch by 3.5 inches. Let's draw in our round end. And there we go, our pattern's ready. I'm going to cut this out. Let's step over and cut some leather. Now back to our veg panel and our wood strap cutter. So we need 1¼ inch. So I'm set, 1¼ inch. Butt that against my edge. Draw that in just a hair. There we go. Now let's pull this tab a little bit to the left, keeping that along the handle. All right, very good. Now, one of the reasons I say this is more of like a production keychain is because right there, I can get 3 out of that one piece. Very nice. All right, for our 2 by 1/2, let's flip over to the other side. Now I'm just going to eyeball this. So 2 1/2, there we go. And we're cut. Again, look at that little piece. That'll come out of all kinds of scrap. Very cool. Let's trim this to size. And we are ready to step over to our quartz. Let's drop in our round holes and our round end punch. We are familiar with everything here, so let's butt to one end with our pattern. And this little pattern, it's hard to move around. 1 mark in each end there. Over here on our main body, just 1 mark. We're going to go with a rivet. So second from my smallest tube. 1 hole there, easy enough. And 2 on our strap. Center those as best we can, but again, our pattern is clean. All right, jump over to 1¼ inch round end. Now, it's a little bit of an obscure size, so if 1½ is all you have, it's going to work nicely. All right, very cool. Let's step back over to our main table, drop in a groove, a bevel, and let's slick that edge. This piece, since it's small, it's going to be a little bit harder to see, but right here, all I'm going to do with this little piece is just clip my corners. That's going to give us enough of a rounded look there, and it will be fine. When we jump over to this, well, we've already used our groover, so let's put a groove line all the way around. There we go. Okay, looking very finished, very professional. Now let's add a bevel. And coming around our corner, there we go. Okay, that looks good. Now we could bevel the back. It's not going to bevel as easily, but really in this situation, with this weight of leather, not terribly necessary. So let's wet our edge. Now I want to hold this flat because I don't want the risk of water running across the face just in case I'm going to use a stain or say maybe a light colored antique or a dye. So there we go. Let's just wet the edge there now. With my groover, or my burnisher, let's get some of that water out of the way. With my burnisher, I'm going right to my middle groove there, and I'm simply going to run that back and forth. Now, the point here is not pressure. It's more friction. I don't want to press down so hard, I develop a lip. But also, this will help. Notice I can put that just off the edge of my table. Now I'm free to move that around, and I've got a little more body to it. And coming around the back side, let's just pay a little extra attention to our ends. Now the camera, I'm sure, is not going to pick that up. But what I've got is a nice, smooth, rounded feel there. Feels actually glossy. Okay, let's step back over to our quartz. Now, we're not going to decorate this keychain. This is your big, empty canvas with all kinds of possibilities. In fact, we know how to set a rivet. Yep. We can drop in a split ring. Easy enough. Let's jump over here and look at some options. Right here, that's simply a round punch. Drop in some suede behind that. Unlimited possibilities in shape and color. There's one that's done in black, red suede, nickel spots behind it. And again, we know how to set those. We can drop in a small saying, a word, or simply someone's initials. Stamping and tooling, again, one of those places, sky is the limit. I love this combination of a stamp and spots. Simple but elegant. And right here, it's got to be one of my favorites. I love the antique look of this. But notice too, very reminiscent of a spur strap. Makes a great keychain. Now, if you fall into these hard and really start pumping out some keychains, I want to show you one thing. Let's do that before we leave. Because notice these. Notice how professional those are. You're going to be amazed at how fast we can punch these out. So let's take a look at that real quick. Now, if you're new to leather, you've probably heard the term a clicker die or a clicker press. That is simply a die press. We can cut or we can emboss with this. Now, there's a leather element out there that's got all the details, so we're not going to go deep here. But two big points. First off, when we think of a die press, we think of simply cutting out our shape. Not true. In fact, here's a custom die. This is for a mystery braid keychain. So I can add my round ends, round holes, slits, and I can even add an oblong if I want to. So we make custom dies. But at the same time, we have standard dies. This is just a key fob. Now watch how easy this is. Done. There we are. There's our key fob. Holes are punched, ready to go. How consistent and how fast is that? This is an absolute necessity when you start to bump up to some production level quantities. If you're new to leather, keychains are a great place to start. Very few tools needed, very little skill required. In fact, we've picked up some great tricks and tips right here. But at the same time, if you're new or if you're seasoned, on the creative side, these have unlimited possibilities. I hope you've had a great time making some keychains with me, and I hope every keychain you make is gorgeous. Good luck with your projects.